Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Julia Winter, and I'm the Director of Development. I have the pleasure of emceeing this year's Hunger Banquet and introducing our incredible presenters tonight. I'd like to invite Amy Hospidarski to the podium. Amy has served on CommUnity's Board of Directors for 7 years and is the outgoing chair. Under Amy's leadership, CommUnity recently installed our newest executive director turned CEO. Please join me in welcoming Amy Hospidarski.
Thank you, Julia. On behalf of CommUnity's board, thank you all for being here. It seems unreal that we haven't been in person the last few years, and it's really nice to see you all here. Over the past 6 years, the Hunger Banquet has become an important event, not only to us at CommUnity, but also to our community at large. Financial hardship and food insecurity burden far too many of our neighbors. Together, we can do something to help break them out of this cycle. Before we get into tonight's program, I'd like to share a special thanks to our sponsors for the evening. Collins Community Credit Union, James Investment Group, the Congregational Church of Iowa City, Green State Credit Union, Lansing Funeral Home and Cremation Services, Oak Knoll, Jean Goshi and Mike Horahan, Phil Bettis, Dave Lesh, Deary Brothers Ford, Diane Bombeck, Hills Bank, Jan and Al Leff, Bruce and Dee Dee Walker, Christine and Sarah Thomas, Mark Ruggeberg, and Bob Brooks. Thank you for helping make the Hunger Banquet possible and for continued support of our neighbors in need. Finally, thank you all for being here. We know that the topics of food and financial insecurity can be a bit heavy. So we hope that by creating a safe place to learn and grow, we all may help to improve our communities. Thank you.
Okay, for those of you who are new to the Hunger Banquet, tonight's event isn't your typical fundraiser. By now, we hope that you're aware that dinner will be served in a little bit different fashion. Is everyone aware of this? Okay. Each table in the ballroom represents Johnson County, and each of you represent a household demographic. This demographic will randomly assign you an income level and a meal. After dinner is served, the program will resume with CommUnity's CEO, Sarah Nelson, who will share the state of the organization and her vision for the future of CommUnity. We have a client video tonight by the fantastic Fred Ebong of FE Studios. We'll take some time to interact with the audience through mobile polling, so if you have a cell phone or mobile device, we'll ask you to take that out a little bit later. And we're excited to welcome Natalie Veldhaus, chair of the Iowa Hunger Coalition, to talk about hunger issues at the state level. We hope that you learned something from tonight's program and that you feel moved to join us in the fight against hunger. Okay, now at each seat, you have an envelope in front of you. Okay? In just a few moments, I'll ask you to open up your envelope and read the card with the name at the top. There's a little story, a profile on each card. It's kind of a little table tent, actually. So before we begin that, I want to define a few key phrases that you'll hear frequently tonight. The Hunger Banquet is a fundraiser designed to immerse people into the reality of food insecurity. But what is food insecurity? Food insecurity is a term used to describe the insufficient access to quality, nutritious food. While hunger and food insecurity are connected, hunger is the physical feeling of an empty stomach. while food insecurity refers to a lack of financial resources available for food at the household level. When we don't provide our bodies with proper nutrition, they must choose which systems to operate at what capacity, resulting in higher likelihood for a variety of chronic health issues like lung disease, heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. You can see on the screen here the USDA definition of food insecurity. Food insecurity is measured and published each year by Feeding America in a study called Map the Meal Gap. They look at national level, state level, county level, and you can even divide it up farther by overall population, children, even some ethnic groups. So here you'll see the 2019 overall rate, the projected 2020, and then the projected 2021 food insecurity rates for Iowa. For the sake of tonight's experiment, we've rounded our percentage because each person is a whole person. You cannot be a half of a percent. And we've chosen a data set that represents the most common household size in Johnson County. So the ranges that you're about to see are based on a 3-person household size. Our source for tonight's data is the 2020 American Community Survey. Let's dive in. In your envelopes, you have a meal reveal card with that name and story and a colored rectangle on the other side. This represents your income level and your meal for the evening. So I want you to take that out, take a moment to read the story, and then we'll go through each of them and reveal your meal. Okay, first up is Aaliyah. Aaliyah immigrated to the United States with her 2 young children in 2019. She decided to call Iowa City home after finding a close-knit group of people from her home country. Her brother and sister-in-law were forced to send their 2 children to live with Aaliyah last year, making her the primary caretaker for all 4 children. This winter, the family's furnace went out. Aaliyah used all of her savings and a cash advance to pay for the repairs. With little money to spare, she prioritizes food for her children over herself. Casey. Casey is a first-generation college student, and their family is incredibly proud of them for attending the university, but they're not able to contribute financially to their education. Because of this, Casey took 2 part-time jobs, working 40 hours a week on top of a full class schedule. With their busy workload, Casey often forgets to eat or skips meals to study. Casey's student status makes them ineligible for many assistance programs, but they're careful to budget necessities like rent, utilities, and basic groceries. If you've selected either Aaliyah or Casey tonight, you represent Johnson County households making between $35,000 to $43,000 annually. At this income level, you are ineligible for SNAP benefits and many other assistance programs. You struggle to make ends meet, but can often throw together a meal with cupboard staples like rice, beans, or noodles. For dinner tonight, you'll receive a bowl of ramen. Anita. Anita is proud to be an entrepreneur. She makes a living doing what she loves, helping people, and feels fulfilled being able to provide for herself and her 2 children. She has a 2-bedroom apartment in a rent-controlled building, but has dreams of owning her own home someday. The nearest grocery store is a 15-minute walk from her apartment, so as a busy working mom, she stops by the fast food restaurant down the street a little more frequently than she'd like. Scott. Scott, his wife, and their baby rent a small home inside the city limits. At the beginning of the pandemic, they decided to invite his elderly parents to live with them so they could spend more time together and watch their grandchild grow up. The free childcare was a huge relief as they were struggling to afford daycare even with their dual incomes. After a few months, however, Scott's employer made the difficult decision to close their business. The family lost half of their household income overnight. If you've selected either Anita or Scott, you represent Johnson County households making between $44,000 and $65,000 annually. At this income level, you are still vulnerable to financial hardships and could find yourself at risk for any number of reasons. For the time being, your expenses are covered, so you decide to take the night off from cooking. Tonight, you'll be having a burger and fries. Janine and her partner recently purchased their first home in a young neighborhood. They enjoy eating out and socializing with their friends at the local brewery. They've both been in the workforce for a couple of years, but recently Janine has been considering an industry change. It would mean using most of her remaining savings to pay for the necessary coursework. Her partner is worried about the added expenses, especially with their recent home purchase. Talia is a stay-at-home mom to an infant and a toddler. She and her husband decided to purchase a house farther from his work so they could live near family and enjoy the lower cost of living that small towns offer. Talia budgets carefully every month to make sure her family has enough for home expenses, groceries, fuel, and entertainment. During these last winter months, though, she noticed that their budget was stretching thinner and thinner as grocery and gas prices rose. She's considering going back to work, but is worried about affordable childcare. Robert is the primary caretaker for his adult brother who has a disability. Robert works days as a restaurant manager while his brother is in the care of a respite program. With his experience in the restaurant industry, he makes a higher than average wage, and his brother receives Social Security benefits. The pair enjoys cooking meals together most nights of the week. If you've selected Janine, Talia, or Robert, tonight you represent Johnson County households making between $66,000 to $87,000 annually. At this income level, you are financially secure and may even have a small savings. Tonight, you'll receive a chicken dinner. And finally, Michael. Like an estimated 2,600 Iowans, Michael doesn't have a place to call home. He's lived without housing since returning from active duty in 2015, and he struggles with PTSD. Unfortunately, Michael lost his ID and birth certificate when his belongings were picked up by refuse workers a few months back. Because he doesn't have these documents, he can't apply for work, housing, or assistance. Michael relies on local nonprofits and the kindness of strangers for any meals. He does not have a stable source of food. If you've selected Michael tonight, you represent Johnson County households making less than $34,000 per year. At this income level, you are eligible for SNAP benefits, but they often run out before the end of the month. Tonight, like an estimated 19,600 Johnson County residents who experience food insecurity, you will not be receiving a meal. Before dinner is served, please make sure your meal card is displayed in front of you with the color side facing the edge of the table. Regardless of your meal assignment tonight, we ask that you be kind to your table mates and be mindful of your neighbors who face these very real challenges. Think about the demographics sitting around the table and around the room. And think about how you could help these individuals in need. Please enjoy your meals. All right, folks. While the last few meals are served, we'll go ahead and get started with our program. It's so nice to hear so much lively conversation in a room. It's been years since we've been together, and we really appreciate everyone for coming out tonight. I hope that your table mates were able to offer perspectives different from your own during dinner, and that perhaps you learned something new. It's not always easy to talk about issues like food insecurity, but we're grateful for your attendance and participation. It is my pleasure to introduce to you CommUnity's Chief Executive Officer, Sarah Nelson. We love Sarah. Sarah joined the organization in May 2021 with 20-plus years experience in social services. In her monumental first year, Sarah has proven that she has what it takes to lead a multifaceted organization. If there was one word to describe the current state of Community, I think we'd all agree it's growth. For more on the state of Community, sorry about that. For more on the state of Community and her vision for the future of the organization, please join me in welcoming Sarah Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's so fun to see everyone in person. So we're talking a lot about food insecurity and hunger this evening, but I'm going to talk about all of what's going on at Community and our programs. I'm so sorry. We're going to turn the music off, and then I'll proceed. That's easier. There we go. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about where we are with crisis services. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the expansion in crisis services and the need for mental health in our community right now. So Community Crisis Services has two different programs, our Crisis Helpline Services and Mobile Crisis Outreach. Our Mobile Crisis Outreach program is consistently responding to over 100 calls per month, with last month responding to 147 calls in 1 month, which is an all-time high for us. We've seen a 433% increase in youth mobile crisis calls in the last 6 months, going from approximately 12 calls that were youth-centered to 64 last month. We've added a youth mobile crisis program coordinator and mental health liaisons in the Iowa City Police Department, as well as we're going to be adding a mental health liaison and to work with Johnson County Sheriff's Department, North Liberty PD, and the City of Coralville PD. So we continue to look at ways to formalize partnerships. We've started working with the Iowa City Community School District, Clear Creek, Amana, to respond to the schools when a child's in crisis, when they're experiencing suicidal ideation, or otherwise agitated and having externalized behaviors. So the biggest growth area for us is definitely our, what used to be crisis intervention program is now crisis helpline services, which we recently were awarded a contract for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which will be the phone number 988. If you have not heard about that, 988 is going to roll out in July 1st, and you will now be able to call 988 like 911 for a mental health crisis. So we will be responding and answering the calls for 988 via chat and text throughout the entire country, 24/7, and we will be responding to chat, text, and phone for Iowans calling 988 throughout the state starting in July. So that is really exciting because it should shift the landscape. We hope people will call 911 less and call 988 more for mental health crisis and get the appropriate responders. And expect to see mobile crisis usage increase significantly with that, as well as other access to mental health. So Guidelink Center is the access center that opened. It's been open for 1 year, and it provides medical detox, sobering, crisis stabilization, and crisis observation programs. It is open 24/7, and it's an alternative to jail and hospitalization. We have community triage counselors that are the first point of entry to that system, so they use the same skills that they use in mobile crisis to triage and figure out what the most appropriate service might be for someone. So that's been pretty exciting to see that roll out in the community. It's been a long time coming. In our basic needs program in the last 6 months, we've provided about 568 households with housing and utility assistance, and 1,721 individuals with assistance for items like birth certificates, IDs, work-enabling items, prescriptions, bus tickets, clothing vouchers, and more. Because of the large expansion in crisis services, we recently hired a director to oversee our basic needs and food bank programs so that we can make sure it doesn't get lost with the crisis services growth, as it's also a very critical time for food insecurity, the needs in the community, and financial assistance as well. The food bank has seen from February to March, we've seen an increase of 634 visits for a total of 3,498 visits. We expect that growth to continue as families are experiencing a decrease in SNAP benefits and the cost of food remains very high. I think that it's really important. I'm sure all of us in this room, regardless of income level, have felt the pain of how high food costs are. So you can only imagine if you're already insecure in that area, what kind of state that's putting in the community. So we're feeling particularly motivated to get as much food in the food bank and try to increase the pounds of food that we're able to provide to households right now more than ever. So all of this wonderful work we could not do without our incredible community partners, such as Table to Table, Crowded Closet, the City of Iowa City, Johnson County, East Central Mental Health Region, the Community Foundation of Johnson County, Iowa City Community School District, United Action for Youth, Abbey Mental Health, local law enforcement, and so many more. I want to talk a little bit about my vision for the organization, and one of the things that I think is really important to consider and that's so unique about community is that all of our services are crisis services, and we believe that strong, healthy, thriving communities take shape when everyone is doing well, when everyone has access to food, shelter, healthcare, mental health services, education, because we're all interconnected. I use the example if your child is in a classroom with a student that is struggling and having behavioral challenges because they're not getting the mental health services they need, your child isn't going to be able to learn as well. This impacts everyone, regardless of the ways. So we're all interconnected, and when we're all doing well, it impacts everyone. So I think, really trying to think of ourselves as interconnected, and that the success of each individual has a bearing on other individuals in our community. So I think that the services that we provide are so critical, because if someone has one critical need met, like shelter, but they don't have access to mental health, the house of cards is eventually going to fall. If they have access to food, but they don't have access to shelter, they're not going to thrive. And so all of these needs for healthcare, for mental health, for food, for housing, they're all critical for safe and thriving communities. And the more that everyone's needs are met, the safer our communities will be. So it's something that I think we can all agree that it benefits everyone. So I just am really proud to be part of an organization that has staff that so deeply care about the work and the mission, a board that cares so deeply, volunteers that care so deeply, donors that care so deeply. It truly is unlike any other organization I've worked for. And I'm really honored to be a part of it. So I'd like to take time to recognize our staff that are here. If you could please stand. And then any board members or committee members that are here, if you could stand to be recognized. And last but definitely not least, any current or former volunteers, please stand to be recognized. So I am excited to introduce this year's video, which didn't make me cry at all. I think it does a really beautiful job of illustrating and demonstrating the heart of our organization and the impact that we have on our community members.
I would like to thank Community for the help they've given me to get back on my feet. They bought me tools that I now use on a daily basis to repair tractors at a local repair shop, and they did not hesitate when it came time to buy clothes for my sister's funeral when she unexpectedly passed away in a house fire the same day I came to Iowa City. I truly believe in a higher power, and I hold God as a staple in my life, and Community has shown nothing but a perfect example of giving love without asking for anything in return. I would like to thank each and every member of this community for the tools they provided me to get back on my feet. I'm currently looking for a place to rent, and I'm still in shelter, but it hasn't even been a month yet since I've been here. I couldn't thank you anymore. God bless you guys, and I'm so grateful. I wish there was a way I can express my gratitude, but I just can't. Every time I start to write this letter, I start tearing up like it's hard for me to finish it. The world needs more people that care half as much as the people from Community Crisis Services and Food Bank. Thank you, Matthew. So the client that sent the letter, I was not there the day he came in for close, but I did get the call asking if it was something we could do, and I said yes. He came in needing work tools. I gave him his tools the second time, and I could see the tears in his eyes, and he thanked me like profusely. He said, well, I don't know if you're a hugger or not, but can I hug you? And I said, come on, let's hug. So he's just a ray of sunshine. He's a great guy. It's overwhelming sometimes to know that we help people to the point that they can actually live their lives and do better for themselves, or be able to give them tools that they need to have confidence to do these things and to find work and not give up when they're sometimes at a really low point.
And I moved in Iowa City. I don't have nothing because you don't have no family here. You don't have nobody else. If you don't believe me, I'm sleeping in the ground here, the floor, for 2 months with one pillow and blanket. I just feel sad, You don't have nothing. For myself, it's okay. I can cover myself with blanket or sleep. For my kid, I worry about them. Make sure my kids safe, my kids sleep good place, not getting sick and stuff. I don't know other people, but for me, I take care for my kid first before I take care for myself. I have 6 boys, and my older one is almost 11, and I have my second one is almost 10, and I have the third one is 8 years old, and I have 6, and I have 3 years and some months, and I have 2 months old. My 2 months old baby, when he born, I don't have no clothes for him, nothing else to cover him. I go to the food bank, they give me voucher for his clothes, I go get the clothes.
I remember the first time I met Sheila. She came to food bank and she had a baby in the car and she couldn't come in, and I think we ended up taking a bag out to her because the baby was asleep or something. The fun thing about Sheila is that I've literally watched some of her children grow. They know our names, and it's really just special to know that you're part of the people's lives that you serve, and it feels good to know that somebody has their back, that we are here to help.
I'm not working, because I have to watch him because babysitter is too expensive for me to pay. But I have some child support for my kid, not much. Sometimes when I'm out, I don't have money to pay my utility bill or my house, I go to the food bank. I ask them, can you please help me? Always they help us in food bank, you go. But they have food stamp, but the food stamp is like enough sometimes, but the food bank always they help us. Not only for me, for everybody. Like you go over there, whatever you need, they have it. Like cereal or milk or eggs or baby diaper or formula or something. They have so many good stuff. You pick up, bring it for our kid, our family to eat.
In the last 30 days, with the SNAP benefits decreasing, what we've already seen is an increase of households. We added 100 new households to food bank visits last month, and we upped our visits by 634 household visits. It could mean that people are coming more frequently because they don't have other resources. Basic needs is financial assistance and assistance in getting IDs and birth certificates, and we help with housing, rent and utility payments, also security deposits for housing.
Summertime, you have more energy you're using for the utility because it's hot, you're using the air system, and then that's why you go help. When you need help, you go to the food bank to help, please. Thank you, God. Always when you call the food bank, they help us.
Oftentimes in basic need, we hear more so where people have fallen on hard times and all these things are happening, and that's how they get referred to food bank as well. So the two really do work very closely together. When we get to hear the stories and people say, I get to have this and now I can do X, Y, and Z, it makes you realize that it's a real thing. One of my favorite moments, I think, is when I first started. There was a little kid, probably 7 or 8, came in and it was their birthday and there was a cake. And this kid was elated by this cake. Mom, it even says happy birthday. It's like they knew. And like that was when I knew I was in the right place. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Knowing that we help over 3,000 households a month have food on the table, that then enables them to buy shoes for their children or something for themselves or to pay a bill rather than have to worry about groceries. It makes me proud to do what I do. Community to me means togetherness and support. And without our donors and our volunteers and our partnerships within the community, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. If it's not a service that we provide, we know where we can refer them to. And it's because we all work together within our community to keep people safe and healthy and fed and get them what they need for themselves and their children and their families. Without donors, we wouldn't be able to do the volume that we do. We wouldn't be able to do the quality of services that we provide. It's such an integral part of the whole scene. And without them, it would not be what it is today. Without our volunteers and all of the work that they do every single day, we couldn't do this work. And they mean so much to us.
This is my third time volunteering. This is my first time. I was in a public health class and they actually brought up this community food bank, and so I thought it would be a good experience. Yeah, it's been super fulfilling. It's crazy to see all the different people that come in here and the different communities that you're working with, and it's awesome.
Thank you for volunteering with us and for all of your hard work and dedication. Okay. Ooh. Touches me every time.
We'll avoid that pain.
I would like to thank community.
Oh gosh, sorry you guys. It's me again. We are so grateful to Sheila and Matthew for sharing their experiences with us. to Crystal for sharing her passion for her work, and to Fred for honoring all of their stories. I was fortunate to sit down with Sheila and hear her story firsthand. She is an incredible mother, daughter, sister, and friend to all she encounters. But she hasn't always been treated with the same kindness that she shows. Before moving to Iowa City, Sheila lived in Atlanta, Georgia, from the time she immigrated from Afghanistan up until 3 years ago. She recalled very distinctly an experience she had with an Atlanta food pantry. She had driven an hour to her father's neighborhood at his suggestion to visit the pantry and shop for her family. Cereal, milk, eggs, baby diapers. After she finished, she was loading the groceries into the trunk of her car, and she was approached by a staff member who told her she was not eligible to shop at their pantry and took everything away from her. Cereal, milk, eggs, baby diapers. To this day, Sheila still remembers his name. She still remembers that horrible feeling the encounter left her with. At Community, we strive to create a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere where no one is turned away. Just as much as Sheila remembers her pantry experience in Atlanta, she remembers the kindness she and her sons have been shown in Iowa City. We'd like to ask you to take out your cell phone, mobile device, whatever you have with you tonight, to participate in a short poll. And I'm going to try to make sure the technology is working for us. So you can join the poll by texting Community 746 to the number 22333, or by scanning that QR code. And we'll go ahead and make sure we are up and running. Is everyone getting cannot join messages? Back up, back up. Oh, sorry. All right, we'll try the backup. Thank you, guys. This is why I love my coworkers. They're so supportive. All right, you guys. That first question for tonight's dinner, I received. Go ahead and text in A for no meal, B for ramen, C for burger and fries, and D for chicken dinner. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is an actual representation of the number of meals in the room tonight. So 14% of our attendees didn't get a meal. It's just about one person at every table. All right, that looks good. We're gonna try moving to the next. How likely do you feel that you, your family or friends or neighbors might personally experience any of the situations that we've talked about tonight? It's so interesting to see so many people that can relate to these situations. We know when we look around this room that we're not alone in the struggles that we have faced or we are currently facing. Okay, we're going to try moving on to number 3. Question 3. This one's taking it back a step. Let me know if you need reminders. Do you personally relate to any of the meal reveal profiles? We had Michael, who was experiencing homelessness as a veteran. Aaliyah, who was a recent immigrant and mother to her 2 children and her 2 nieces and nephews, which I recently learned the term for gender-neutral nieces and nephews is nibbling. Isn't that fun? You learned something new tonight. Casey is that college student working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Anita is a single mother working hard to afford her home. Scott, his wife, and his baby took in his parents in the pandemic, and he lost his job. Janine and her partner bought a home, unknowing the expenses that awaited them, and now has to make a difficult choice between going to school. Then we have Talia, who's a stay-at-home mother. And she noticed that inflation creeping up. And finally, Robert, who's the primary caretaker for his brother with a disability. That's awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with us tonight. And we have one final poll question here. This is an open-ended poll question. So we'll ask that you type in a word or short phrase, something you felt after watching that video and hearing those profiles. I'm sad, compassion, energized. That's awesome. Get a little pep in your step about the work we're doing. Love, I love that. Interconnected. Guilty. That's really interesting. Empathy, proud, blessed, humbled. Gratitude, nice, surprised, wow. These are all really awesome words. Hopeful, that one's getting bigger and bigger. Enlightened. Compassion, moved. I love this. Thank you all so much for participating in this survey. We'll go ahead and end it now, and this will capture a little screenshot. So thank you all for contributing to that. All right. Here to share about recent changes to SNAP benefits and the outcomes suspected, please join me in welcoming Natalie Veldhaus. Okay, come on up. Natalie is a policy advocate with Common Good Iowa, and she serves as the current chair of the Iowa Hunger Coalition. She works to advance policy and secures food and income assistance for Iowans through a combination of community engagement, policy analysis, and advocacy strategies. Natalie received her master's in social work and BA in ethics and public policy from the University of Iowa. Go Hawks. She served as an AmeriCorps Vista with Community Crisis Services and Food Bank, coordinating research efforts for the Johnson County Hunger Task Force in 2015. Natalie has experience working in food pantries, school social work, health and education policy analysis, and science research. Thank you for joining us tonight, Natalie.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I have a really loud voice. I was also explicitly told not to walk in front of the projector, and that did not go well. Thank you for that introduction. I feel really honored to be here this evening. I'm here to talk a bit about what we're seeing with our SNAP program. Most folks know the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, but I did want to note that it feels extra special to be here tonight because I started my career at Community in 2014, interning with the food bank program, and was a part of launching the mobile pantry program. So this organization means a lot to me, and I just want to thank Community for taking a chance on me 8 years ago and somehow finding me employable, and for inviting me back this evening. And so I'm going to talk a bit about SNAP. It can get a little wonky, it can get a little dry, but we're going to make it as fun as possible. There have been some really substantial policy changes to the SNAP program, beginning when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. And the program really loosened up and became very flexible to meet the needs that we were seeing. And that's where things get really wonky. I'm not going to get into all of that. But one really important piece is called maximum allotments. And what that meant was that folks on SNAP were all getting the maximum benefit that they possibly could for their household size. And for families across Iowa, this is a huge boost. This was like $100, $200 more than they were normally getting in SNAP. So this was a huge increase and a really big deal. And folks in Iowa got that for about 2 years until earlier this year when Iowa's public health emergency proclamation was ended. And actually this month, we heard a bit about this in the video and from other speakers, this is the first month that folks are returning to their pre-pandemic benefit levels. So that is a huge deal, and we're hearing about it across pantries in Iowa. And so, what does that actually mean for a family? I want to tell a quick story about a friend and fellow SNAP advocate I know in Des Moines. Her name is Kramer. She's 45. She has a cat named Busy, which I think is very cute. And she uses a pantry that's part of the DMARC Food Pantry Network in Polk County. And she has a genetic disorder that causes chronic illness and really limits her mobility, so she's unable to work. So just to illustrate this, before the pandemic, she was receiving $16, that's 1-6, not 60, in food assistance in SNAP every month. And then during the pandemic, she was receiving $250. So that is such a huge increase that really enabled her to buy the quantity and quality of food that she needs to manage the symptoms of her illness, and really subsided this anxiety that folks experience when they're not sure when their next meal is coming from. And on average in Iowa, families are seeing about a $95 benefit cut per month because of the ending of the max allotments. But we know that just because SNAP benefits are being diminished or maybe taken away from some families, hunger still persists. And unfortunately, I wish I was like pivoting to some good news. But while all this is happening, there's been a couple bills in the Iowa legislature that really target SNAP and change some pieces about eligibility that make it harder to get on the program and harder to stay on the program. So really they create more red tape and really create more cracks for families to fall through. I don't know how many folks have been through the SNAP application process. It is not fun. There's a lot of paperwork, and I would say that the word dignity is not really like a concept that they're really trying to bake into that process. So thankfully, we have anti-hunger advocates across the state that were able to stave off really the most harmful part of this bill that was called the asset test. And that could have disqualified folks from receiving SNAP if they have very meager savings or, for example, lived in a household with more than one vehicle. Sorry, I just still can't believe that. And so we know through human experience and through research that these kinds of policies don't lift folks out of poverty, they keep them in it. And you know, some people might say, oh, Natalie, you know, these are just these little tweaks and little changes to these programs. What's the big deal? Why are you always freaking out? But I lobby on SNAP issues at the Capitol. And whenever we're talking about SNAP, there's always, to me, this unspoken or implicit conversation that we're having about who deserves to have enough to eat and who doesn't. And we hear about hunger talked about in terms of being this kind of individual problem or some kind of personal failing. But we in this room, we know better. We know that hunger is a policy choice. We know that poverty is not some unfortunate accident, and it's very much tied to the kinds of policies that we have. You know, economic policies. We have policies in Iowa that keep wages pretty low. We've had some attacks on workers' rights. And we have all of these systems and policies in place that make it easier to generate and safeguard financial stability for some, and very much not so for others. So for me in my work, I try to always connect those pieces because we have the stories like we see in the video we just watched, but we also have a lot of things going on at the Capitol that are bearing on what we're seeing day to day in our communities. And so I say all this to say that when we have policies and programs at the state and federal level that are important, but sometimes they change at the drop of the hat, and they turn away from folks in Iowa who need food assistance. And in those moments, it's organizations like Community that step up and fill those gaps. And I know from working at Community that they work very hard to make sure they're providing those services in a way that preserves and uplifts the dignity of folks who need this food assistance, because we understand that hunger is not an individual problem, it is a community problem, and we all need to be a part of the solution. So I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. I want to thank everyone for their support of Community, because especially right now, I wish I had better SNAP news right now, but it's just really kind of a crapshoot right now. And folks are really getting hit hard, like we said, food prices, inflation, all the, and sorry, this is not in my little thing I wrote down, but I remember I work with food pantries across the state, and I work with community action programs, and I remember checking in earlier on in the pandemic and saying, you know, how are things going? Is everything okay? Folks were like, things are kind of okay, because there's all this influx of all these programs and funds, and like, whoa, where'd all this money come from? And they were all just waiting for that shoe to drop, you know? Like, when is it just gonna go away? And unfortunately, when it comes to SNAP and food assistance, that's right now. This is the moment we've been really afraid of. So it really matters that you're here. It matters that you're a part of this community. And anyway, I wanted to thank you for listening to me talk. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening and are able to take a dinner roll and put it in your purse or whatever. I'm definitely one of those kinds of folks. But yeah, thank you. And it's lovely to be back in Johnson County. Thank you for inviting me.
Natalie and I got to share an office one summer when we were both students at the Crisis Center back then, so it's really cool to have her back with us tonight and see the absolutely incredible work that she's accomplishing at the state level. So we're very proud of her and very grateful to have her here. Okay, now's the fundraiser part. Not quite. As a human services nonprofit, our ultimate goal is to no longer be needed. And like Natalie mentioned, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was kind of like, what's going on? Where is everyone? But we had a moratorium on evictions, we had increased SNAP benefits, we had increased unemployment benefits, all of these things that really helped lift our neighbors up and help them not only be able to sustain their livelihoods, but to contribute to our local economies. We want to not only help break people out of the cycle of crisis, but to lift those up who are struggling. For us, that means providing equitable services and allowing our clients to define their own needs. For Matthew, that need was tools to start a new career and clothing so he could feel dignified attending his sister's funeral. For Sheila, that need is groceries to feed and diaper her 6 growing boys, because boys eat a lot, and she has 6. And child support and SNAP benefits only get you so far. For thousands of other Johnson County residents, those needs are food, financial, and emotional support. Hunger is not a standalone issue. It's caused by food insecurity and rooted in the lack of financial resources. It contributes to issues with physical and mental health, housing stability, education, and productivity. Hunger halts the success of the individual, the family, and the community. Tonight, I'd like to ask you to join me in making a gift to community. With the recent changes to SNAP benefits, the fight against hunger is now in the hands of the community. Every dollar matters, every person matters. There are envelopes and donation cards inside each of your place settings. No. Or you can follow the QR code on the screen. You can make a secure online donation. When we stand together, we can end hunger. Thank you for attending the 6th Annual Hunger Banquet. We hope you enjoyed the evening and possibly even learned something new. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email survey asking about your experience. We value your feedback and would appreciate hearing from you. Thank you all so much for being here.